So I've always known that Moss was a great fragrance from the house of Commodity, but I did not know that they could do such a great job with it, moving it over to the Scent Space collection of fragrances. So the Scent Space collection of fragrances takes a fragrance, existing fragrance from Commodity, and creates a personal version, an expressive version, and a bold version. The original version is the expressive version, and now we have the personal version in the white bottles, and then we've got the bold version in the black bottles with the gold writing. I'm going to let you know all about Moss from Commodity. Great fragrance, perfect for summer, all coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. Yes, today we're talking about Moss from the house of Commodity in the Scent Space collection of fragrances. I've always been a fan of Commodity fragrances, and I was disappointed when they folded in the early part of 2019. It came back in 2020, and they relaunched the Scent Space collection of fragrances, and they've moved over several fragrances from their catalog into this collection. And then they have now Paper and Milk that I've reviewed on the channel, and today it's Moss in the Scent Space collection of fragrances like this. Really great smelling fragrance. If you've ever smelled the original, boy, you should definitely try the minus, the personal version, and the bold in the plus version. Man, they're so different but so good and so similar at the same time. Really wonderful offerings, and depending on your mood or the type of person you are with what kind of fragrances you wear, you can select one of the choices here. Before I let you know about the fragrances and the different versions of Moss, if this is your first time tuning into the channel and you haven't subscribed, please do click the subscribe button below, and also click the bell so that you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. How many of you are fans of Commodity fragrances, and have you tried Moss before? This is the greenest, mossiest, and also citrusiest fragrance in this collection. It's actually a really pleasure to wear, and the original version is great, and as I said, it was a really great offering from this house. Green and mossy and earthy and woody and citrusy. But now with the minus and the plus, they've just done an excellent job. The original came out in 2013, and it's created by perfumer Donna Ramanauskas. She's done a couple of other fragrances for the house of Commodity, and then they've updated it with the minus here, and then of course the plus. So I'm going to talk to you about the personal version first, which I just recently featured in a summer fragrances video. This is a perfect version of Moss. It's for those people that want fragrances to be more personal and intimate and subtle. If you want fragrances, but you perhaps work in an environment where people are very sensitive to smells, or maybe a family member or something, this is the kind of fragrance you would wear. So the three different formats of the fragrance are in different prices, and all three of them come in 100 ml, which this is the 100 ml of the personal for $105. There's also a 10 ml for $26, and I have a link to Commodity in the info box with a discount code that saves you 10% off. This to me is very intimate and personal, and if you like fragrances like Molecule 1 and things like that, just imagine the original Moss stripped away from some of its oils and intensity of the different notes in the fragrance, and then added to those lighter renditions of those notes. They've added musks here, so it's kind of like a Molecule 1 type of a fragrance with the mossy version of this fragrance. So it's a lighter take on that, and it's actually really great because it's not overly intense, but it has great lingering power because of all the musks here. Really great musks. It's actually super delicious to wear, especially if I want to wear something and it's like just overwhelming with heat. And sometimes when it's really hot outside, you do want something a little light, and this actually really does satisfy, really does. This features notes of Bergamot, ISOE Super, Petitgrain, and Musks. So it seems like they've removed most of the moss, but I still get mossiness in here. Definitely do, but I felt like the Petitgrain is amplified but the Bergamot is also amplified even further, and then they've thrown in those musks. There's definitely that presence of ISOE Super, and that's why I'm saying it reminds me of something like Molecule 1 from Eccentric Molecules. It definitely does, because you experience the ISOE Super here. But there's loads of musks in here. Most likely there's something like ambroxan or other synthetic musks to extend the life of the fragrance. It's the base here, and so I love this. I really, really love it. I didn't know I was going to like this one that much, because I really love the original a lot. It's just so green and mossy and earthy and fresh and bitter with that Petitgrain note, but they really did a great job with this particular version. And if I'm ever in the mood for Molecule 1 with something added to it, this is it. Like green and fresh and citrusy, this is it. This is really, really great fragrance. So Commodity Moss is the personal version, and all the personal fragrances in the Scent Space collection from Commodity come in the white bottle, the personal, and they'll always have a minus on it. Let's see if I can show you that. So the minus means they've taken the original, the Expressive, and stripped it away with adding additional, most of the time they're adding these synthetic notes or minimalistic notes to create the fragrance to have, you know, good longevity, even though it's an intimate and very, very subtle take on the original fragrance. So they don't advertise concentrations with this collection of Scent Space collection from Commodity, but they have their own take on the concentrations, which doesn't necessarily mean there are concentrations, but you pick a personal one if you want the fragrance to be, you know, intimate. You pick the Expressive one if you want the original, and you pick the bold one if you want more intensity. So first thoughts on Commodity Moss Minus or Personal. I highly recommend it. And all three of these fragrances in either format is going to be perfect for summer. I think they're just amazing. And the bold is even better. I absolutely love the intensity of the bold. So going back to the original, the Expressive Moss, here it is. They changed the bottles, obviously, you can see that now. So Moss in the Expressive version originally launched in 2013. The two additional versions, the Personal and the Bold, launched in 2021. Moss in the original Expressive format features notes of grapefruit, bergamot, petitgrain, orange blossom, oak moss, cedar wood. So the oak moss is definitely a lot more prominent here, and again, this is the original version. And if you think the minus version or the personal version is too light and the bold version is too strong, you would go with the original in the Expressive version. But this is a very, very green fragrance, and it has floral qualities for sure. It's got that orange blossom in here. It's a citrusy fragrance, but definitely has the orange blossom or floral take on this. Definitely lots of woods here as well. It has a woody dry down, and it's very, very green and fresh, and definitely very, very mossy with earthiness and definitely lots of greenness. So this is the original that started it all. I'm gonna spray some on because this smells so good. It's a great smelling fragrance. But yeah, it's very, very green, and there's definitely bitterness here. The bitterness comes from this Petitgrain note, and I think the Petitgrain note is a great match to the oak moss, and it amplifies the intensity or the green earthy qualities, bitter qualities of the oak moss, because there's always like a bitterness with the Petitgrain note, which is the bitter oranges leaves, and so they kind of like really work nicely together, the oak moss and the Petitgrain. I didn't tell you the prices on the Expressive. So 100 ml in the Expressive version like this is $125, and the 10 ml is $28. And then finally in the bold, the 100 ml is $145, 10 ml is $30. So you have to decide which one you want. And there's definitely kits you can buy of the samples. You can test all three together and decide which is your favorite, and you can always, you know, go with that, but you can always try before you buy or commit to a full bottle, if that makes sense. But finally, Commodity Moss in the bold version, or Moss Plus, is super, super good. Really, really intense, overwhelming, amplified greenness, amplified earthiness, amplified mossiness. Oh man, it's really, really great. The Moss Plus, or in the bold version, features notes of bergamot, juniper berry, violets, petitgrain, Elemi resin, amber, patchouli, and oak moss. So basically, they've amplified this fragrance with depth. They've added the Elemi resin and amber, so there's definitely an ambery experience here in the dry down, and you can feel it when you spray it. When you're comparing all three, you'll notice the thickness. The Moss Plus, or in the bold version, is definitely the denser, more thicker version, and there's people out there in the community that love their fragrances intense and overwhelming, and I'm not going to say this is like uber beast mode, but this is definitely, in comparison to the other two versions, definitely thicker and more intense, and it's more concentrated. You can definitely feel and experience the concentration here. But you still have this bold version is definitely closer to the Expressive version, but just think of the Expressive version having a more of a ambery resinous backbone with woods and thickness, added to it to intensify it, but you're still experiencing the greenness. It's lots of greenness here. Green, bitter, citrusy from the Petitgrain note, and definitely the mossiness here is really, really great. I was telling a friend recently, I said, moss in the plus reminds me of a major dosage of Petitgrain or Citrusy Petitgrain with kind of like the experience of Mousse Illuminée from Rogue Perfumery. Like if you like that, which is a fragrance focusing on oak moss or moss, here I get a little bit of that when it's drying down with an overdose of citrusy Petitgrain note. It's so good. It's a great fragrance. It's intense. It'll be a perfect summer fragrance if you like your summer fragrances to be more concentrated, and you want to go with something much more concentrated than this, or even more concentrated than the minus version. I think Moss Plus would do just fine. If you like uber green fragrances and also citrusy and mossy, this is definitely a no-brainer. You've got to get your nose on it. It's that good. I can't believe how great it is. When I really liked the original, they have outdone themselves with the plus. Really have. I think it's just to die for. But you gotta like green and bitter fragrances. You also gotta like the citrusy, mossy fragrances. If you can get past those, I mean, if you like them, you must get your nose on them. But I think you should test all three of them. If you've never tested Moss from Commodity, I think they've done a great job with this fragrance. I think in the latter couple of years, it's become a favorite of mine because I discovered it kind of late, but I'm head over heels for that smell, especially if you like Petitgrain, because for me it's all about Petitgrain first, then it's all about moss. And of course Petitgrain is more of a top and heart note, and moss is definitely, or oak moss is a base note, so you're going to experience a lot of the Petitgrain. But either way, those are my thoughts on the Commodity Moss fragrances. They're really great fragrances. You should try them, and now that we're in summer, you must test these out and wear them because they're going to be perfect in the summertime. Other than that, guys, that's all I have for you. If you want to take advantage of my discount code, it's in the info box. It's for Commodity fragrances. You'll save 10% off of any of the fragrances on their website. Yeah, best way to test these out is with samples because they don't sell these at stores. But their samples and the discovery sets are not that expensive either. Either way, thanks so much for tuning in today. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook. And I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.